I never thought the lowest point in my life would begin with an email that simply said, "We need to talk." Just 3 days earlier, I had been standing at my mother's graveside in upstate New York, trying to hold myself together as we laid to rest the only person who had ever truly believed in me. I had cleared the leave with my manager weeks in advance. I had the approval in writing. But none of that mattered when I returned to work and found my ID badge deactivated and my desk already reassigned. No warnings, no phone call, just gone, fired, for attending my own mother's funeral. What happened next shouldn't have happened to a quiet, rule-following guy like me. My story caught fire. A simple, heartbroken post on LinkedIn turned into a national conversation. My inbox flooded with thousands of messages. Stories from people like me who've been chewed up and spit out by heartless corporate policies. I wasn't just grieving my mother anymore. I was grieving the illusion that hard work and loyalty meant something. But that pain, it ignited something. I fought back, not just for me, but for everyone who's ever had to choose between being a good employee and being a good human being. I never imagined that getting fired would lead to a new career, a viral movement, or an opportunity to rewrite the rules of workplace dignity. This is a story of how I lost everything, and then found a purpose bigger than any job title. And it all started with one devastating moment I'll never forget. It was a Tuesday morning in late March when my phone rang, the kind of ring that tears you from sleep and stabs panic right through your chest. I glanced at the clock. 4:12 a.m. "Dylan," my sister's voice cracked. "Mom's gone." For a full 10 seconds, I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. The words felt like a hammer, smashing the walls of my chest. What do you mean?" I whispered, still trying to convince myself I was dreaming. "She passed in her sleep. Dad found her. The paramedics, they said it was peaceful." I didn't hear much after that. My thoughts blurred into static. I must have said something. I think I told her I'd catch the next flight to Denver. The only thing I remember clearly is the feeling of my legs giving out beneath me as I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the framed picture of my parents on my nightstand. Mom was smiling in it. Of course, she was. By 10:30 a.m., I was at Reagan National Airport, waiting for a flight to Colorado. The spring morning in D.C. was beautiful. Sun out, cherry blossoms blooming, but I couldn't see any of it. All I saw was the image of Mom, in her kitchen apron, humming along to Fleetwood Mac as she poured coffee for Dad and me last Thanksgiving. It had only been 4 months ago. I called my manager, Todd, from the airport gate. "Hey, Todd," I said, trying to sound composed. "I just got some devastating news. My mom passed away last night. I'm flying out to Denver this morning. I'll need a few days." Silence. Then, "Damn, Dylan, I'm really sorry. Take the time you need. I'll mark you out for 3 days. That should cover the funeral and travel, yeah?" "Yeah. Thank you, Todd." "No worries. Take care of yourself. Keep me posted." I remember exhaling, relieved. Todd wasn't always the warmest guy, but in that moment, he'd sounded human. That was all I needed. The next few days felt like someone had hit the fast-forward button on life, but I was stuck on pause. Mom's funeral was held at St. Andrew's Church in Aurora. I hadn't stepped inside that church since I was a teenager, but it hadn't changed. The wooden pews, the giant stained glass window above the altar, and the smell, that odd mix of candles and time, it all brought memories crashing down on me. There were flowers, friends, distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. But what broke me was Dad's trembling hand as he tried to read his eulogy. He never finished it. I stood up, walked over, and finished it for him, barely getting the words out through my own tears. Mom believed in kindness. She believed that even the smallest gesture, a smile, a warm meal, a handwritten note, could change someone's day. She never met a stranger she couldn't love. She really didn't. After the service, we returned to the house. It was the same red brick home I grew up in, but now every corner felt hollow. Her cooking utensils were still hanging neatly by the stove. Her reading glasses were still on the arm of her favorite chair, next to a half-read copy of The Nightingale. And her perfume, that lavender scent, still lingered in the hallway. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my old bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me, listening to my father sob quietly in the room across the hall. My heart felt like it had grown roots into the mattress, anchoring me in sorrow. On the third day, I flew back to D.C., feeling like a completely different man than the one who had left. Losing your mother changes something in you. It carves a hollow spot in your chest that nothing ever quite fills. I walked into my apartment on O Street and dropped my suitcase by the door. The silence felt louder than the noise of the airplane. I opened the fridge, took out a beer, and sat on the couch, still in my funeral suit. I told myself I'd go to work the next morning, get back to routine, and try to keep moving. That's what Mom would have wanted. Before we go to bed, I checked my work email out of habit. There it was. Subject: Urgent HR matter. Immediate attention required. I clicked it open, confused. The message was short and cold. Dylan, asterisk due to your unreported and extended absence from the workplace this week. Your position has been terminated effective immediately. Please return any company property by Friday. You will receive your final paycheck by mail. HR department asterisk. I froze. My eyes went back to the date. That email had been sent yesterday. I reread it. Once. Twice. Then again. It didn't make sense. I had approval. Todd had said it was fine. 3 days. That's all I took. I wasn't even late coming back. I picked up my phone and dialed Todd. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. And again. No answer. My hands were shaking as I scrolled back through my call logs. There it was. March 26, 10:37 a.m. The call with Todd. It lasted 3 minutes and 16 seconds. I stare at the wall, mouth open, mind spiraling. I had just buried my mother, and now I'd been fired? Was this some kind of sick joke? It felt like the world had ripped the rug out from under me, twice in 1 week. But I didn't cry. Not this time. This time, I got angry, and that anger was the beginning of something I hadn't felt in days, the will to fight. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, fully clothed on my couch, the unopened beer still sweating on the coffee table, staring at the glowing email on my laptop screen, like it was some kind of nightmare that would vanish if I blinked hard enough. But it didn't. Fired. Just like that. 3 days. That's all I took. 3 days to bury my mother, hold my father upright, and breathe through grief thick enough to choke me. And they canned me like I was some intern who ghosted after payday. At 6:42 a.m., I finally stood up and went into the shower. The water ran cold before I even shampooed. My apartment's old plumbing was always an issue, but I never cared much. Today, it stung like betrayal. By 8:15, I was standing outside the office building in Arlington where I had worked for 6 years. Crestron Analytics, 4th floor. We designed optimization software for healthcare networks. Sexy, right? My ID card still beeped at the turnstile. That was mistake number 1 on their end. The receptionist, a 20-something named Leah, looked up and did a weird double take when she saw me. Dylan? You're here? Yup, I said with a tight smile. Apparently, I was terminated yesterday. Thought I'd come in and find out why the hell that is. She looked spooked, like someone had brought a ghost into the office. Wait here. I'll get Todd. She vanished through the hallway, heels clicking like a metronome. I stood there, every muscle in my body stiff with tension. I wanted answers. I wanted explanations. Hell, I deserved them. Todd showed up 4 minutes later. Dark suit, slick back hair, and the exact same fake management smile he'd used during every quarterly review. Dylan, he said like he was greeting a customer at a car dealership. Didn't expect to see you here. No kidding, I replied. I got fired while burying my mother. Thought I'd stop by and ask how that makes sense. He glanced toward Leah like he wanted her to disappear. Then he motioned for me to follow him into the conference room. Once the door shut behind us, he sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose like he was the one under pressure. Look, man, he started. I approved your leave, yeah, but there was a miscommunication. HR flagged your absence as unreported and followed protocol. What protocol fires someone without a damn phone call? I snapped. You couldn't pick up the phone? 1 text? 1 email? Todd held up his hands. It wasn't my call, Dylan. Legal sign-off on it. They said since there was no formal documentation, they had to move forward. I didn't find out until the paperwork was already moving. That's bull. I caught myself, fists clenched. You and I talked. I told you I was flying to Denver. You said, take what you need. I even have the call logged. Do you think I was making that up? He shifted in his chair, eyes flickering. Guilt? Embarrassment? I couldn't tell. I'm sorry, man. Really. It's just happened fast. Yeah, I said. Death usually does. He winced. I gave this place 6 years. I continued. Worked overtime, hit every target, covered people's shifts, trained new hires. And the first time I take time off for a funeral, I get canned? Are you kidding me? Todd didn't answer. He just stared at the table. You know what hurts the most? I said, voice low now. It's not even the job. It's the silence. No one called. No one checked in. No condolences. Just, you're done. Like I was a busted printer. He opened his mouth to say something, but I stood up before he could. Keep your apologies, Todd. Tell your legal team I'm keeping my documentation too. Then I walked out. The elevator ride down felt like free fall. I wasn't even sure what I was more furious about. The fact that I was unemployed, or that I had actually believed Todd had my back. When I stepped outside, the sky was clear and absurdly blue. People were walking around with iced lattes, earbuds, and already neck-deep in the day. For me, the world had cracked open, and nobody noticed. I went straight home and dug to my phone logs, screenshots, everything. I had proof of our conversation. If HR want to call it unreported, I'd show them what approved looked like. Next, I checked my inbox. No warnings, no follow-ups, nothing. Just the termination email. Then I remembered an older colleague, Susan, who had mentioned a labor attorney after her brother got shafted by his tech firm in Bethesda. I called her. Dylan, she said, surprised. Oh, God, I just heard about your mom. I'm so sorry. Thanks, I said. I'm calling because something else happened. I got fired for taking leave to attend the funeral. There was a pause. Wait, what? I told her everything. She went quiet for a moment, then said, let me send you Mark's number. He's a good employment lawyer. Sharp. This is exactly the kind of crap he eats for breakfast. By 3 p.m., I was sitting in front of my laptop. Zoom call with Mark Dawson, a blunt and brilliant-looking guy in a gray polo who didn't waste time. You've got a solid case, he said after I explained. They fired you without written warnings, despite verbal approval, during a family bereavement. That's potential wrongful termination, and we can hit them with a retaliation angle too, depending on their paper trail. I stared at him. So, what does that mean? It means they messed with the wrong grieving son. That night, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, looking out at the D.C. skyline. The Capitol dome glowed in the distance like a lighthouse for the lost. I lit the candle we'd used at Mom's memorial. She would have hated what happened. She would have told me to fight back, but not out of anger, out of principle, out of self-respect. And for the first time since that awful phone call from my sister, I felt something different than grief. I felt purpose. Mark Dawson didn't waste time. Within 48 hours, I had a signed retainer agreement, a neatly organized Google Drive folder labeled Crestron Termination Case, and a list of everything he needed from me. Emotion doesn't win court, he'd told me during our second call. Facts do. We need to outpaper them, outdocument, outreason, and then we drop it on their legal desk like a damn wrecking ball. And I was ready to swing. By Wednesday, my dining table looked like a crime investigation scene. Call logs, screenshots, HR policy PDFs I'd archived, my performance reviews, all 5 years of them, with glowing remarks and quarterly awards. Even the holiday party photos, where Todd had his arm slung around my shoulder like I was some golden retriever he just adopted. I labeled everything, dated it. I even made a timeline. Started with my mother's diagnosis last fall, when I first mentioned to Todd that I might need some time off soon. Mark was impressed. You ever consider law school? He asked during our third Zoom. Nope. I just grew up with a mom who kept every receipt and a dad who filed his tax returns in color-coded folders. Well, he smirked. They raised you right. Because this is ammo. The next big moment came Friday morning. Mark sent an official notice to Crestron's legal team. Subject line: intent to file wrongful termination and retaliation under FMLA guidelines. He CC'd me. Just seeing it hit their inbox gave me a rush that no cup of coffee ever could. By noon, Todd called. Dylan, hey, I got a message from legal. They said you're pursuing action? I didn't smile, but I wanted to. That's right. You sure you want to do that? I mean, this could hurt your future prospects. Make it look like you're difficult. I nearly laughed out loud. Difficult? Todd, I took 3 days off for my mother's funeral. You fired me. I'm not difficult. I'm grieving. And now I'm suing. He paused. I didn't want this, man. You know that. That makes two of us, I said and hung up. That night, I sat in my dad's garage in Denver. I had flown back to help sort through Mom's things. The grief still lived in the walls of that house. Her slippers still under the coffee table. Her garden gloves still in the mudroom. But when I told Dad about the lawsuit, something flickered in his eyes, something between pride and worry. You sure you want to go through with it? He asked, handing me a beer. Yeah, I said. They made me feel disposable. She raised me better than that. He nodded slowly. Then let him have it. 2 weeks later, we got a response. Crestron's lawyers requested mediation. They're scared of the press, Mark told me. They Googled your mother's obituary. They saw your LinkedIn. They know you have friends still in the company. They don't want this in court. Part of me wanted to reject the offer just to make them sweat. But Mark reminded me, this isn't about revenge. It's about justice. If we can get a solid settlement and a clean record, we win. So we agreed to mediate. Mediation was set for a Tuesday in mid-March at a neutral office in Alexandria, Virginia. I wore the only suit I owned. It still smelled faintly like the church where we held Mom's funeral. I walked into the building with my shoulders back and chin high, but my heart was pounding like a jackhammer. Crestron sent 2 people. Their general counsel, some stiff in a gray tie named Dennis, and Todd. I didn't look at Todd. Mark did all the talking. He laid out the facts with the precision of a surgeon, showed timestamps, emails, call logs, and Crestron's own leave policy, highlighting the line that read, verbal approvals in emergency situations may be granted at management discretion. Then he paused, looked right at Dennis. Let me be clear. My client lost his mother, was verbally approved for time off, and was then fired without notice. That's emotional distress, reputational damage, and a clear violation of company policy. If this goes to trial, we'll request punitive damages. And if it hits the press, well, I hope your PR team is ready. Dennis shifted in his chair. Todd looked like he wanted to sink into the carpet. After a short break, they returned with an offer. $65,000 in damages. Removal of the termination from my employee record. A formal letter of recommendation signed by Crestron's VP of Operations. I looked at Mark. He gave a subtle nod. We took it. I walked out of that building not as someone who got fired, but as someone who fought back and won. Later that evening, I sat on the roof of my friend Jesse's building in D.C., watching the sun sink behind the Potomac. I told him everything. He cracked a beer, handed me one, and said, "You didn't just win for you, man. You won for anyone who's ever been tossed aside when life kicked them down." I didn't say anything. I just looked out at the river and thought of Mom, her laugh in the kitchen, her perfume on old scarves, her strength. She would have been proud. It all started with a single post on LinkedIn. I hadn't planned on sharing anything public. Honestly, I just wanted to move on, take the settlement, rebuild my life, maybe finally get a dog like I always told Mom I would. But after that mediation, something lingered in my chest like unfinished business. People didn't know what had happened. My co-workers were still under the impression that I had resigned. Todd must have spun that story faster than a D.C. lobbyist dodging a subpoena. And worse, someone had reached out to me asking for a reference for the same team that fired me. That was the last straw. So I opened my laptop, cracked my knuckles, and wrote, 3 days after burying my mother, I was fired. I'd been at Crestron Tech for 5 years. Loyal, top performer. I'd even helped write the company's own emergency leave policy. When I asked for 3 days to attend my mother's funeral, my manager verbally approved it. No hesitation. But when I got back, I was told my position had been restructured. No warning. No performance issues. No closure. I fought it, legally, and I won. This post isn't for sympathy. It's for everyone who's been chewed up by corporate coldness and made to feel like they don't matter. You do. Stand up. Speak up. You're not alone. Hashtag workers' rights. Hashtag grief and work. Hashtag FMLA. Hashtag you are not disposable. I clicked post, close a laptop, and figured maybe a few friends would like it, leave a comment, or send a thumbs up. I underestimated the internet. By morning, it had over 8,000 likes. By afternoon, 25,000. Then the messages started rolling in. Hundreds of them. Some were from strangers in Ohio, California, Georgia. People who'd lost spouses, siblings, even children, and still got written up for unexcused absences. One guy from Indiana said he got demoted while sitting in a hospice room with his dying father. Others were from HR managers, even attorneys. This took guts, one message said. Thank you for saying what so many of us wish we could. And then there were the journalists. By day 2, I had voicemails from Forbes, BuzzFeed News, and Business Insider. I didn't respond right away. I was still catching my breath. But Mark, my lawyer, called me that night with the enthusiasm of someone who just found buried treasure. This is the kind of momentum that changes company culture, he said. We might have settled, but this is bigger than one case. You could actually make a difference here. You think so? I asked, genuinely unsure. I know so, he said, and it might open a few doors for you too. 2 days later, I agreed to do an interview with a journalist named Claire from The Atlantic. We met at a quiet coffee shop in Capitol Hill. She looked about my age, maybe a few years younger, and had the calm but alert energy of someone who listened for a living. She asked thoughtful questions about the timeline, the emotional toll, and my motivation for posting the story. I told her everything. About my mom, Patricia Ellis, how she worked 40 years as a school librarian in Aurora, Colorado, how she taught me that people matter more than policy, and how she used to leave sticky notes on my mirror that said things like, "Don't let the world turn you hard." Claire scribbled it all down. "Do you want your former employer named in the article?" she asked. I paused. "Yes," I said finally. "Not out of vengeance. Out of truth." The article went live a week later under the title, "Fired for Grieving. One Man's Battle Against Corporate Indifference." By then, my post had been shared over 100,000 times. The article exploded. I started getting DMs from employment lawyers asking if I'd testify in other cases. One woman from Minnesota wrote that her company reversed a termination after her manager read my post. Even Todd reached out. I didn't answer, but I did screenshot the message and save it in a folder titled Poetic Justice. And then something unexpected happened. Recruiters. They came in waves from Seattle, from Austin, from Boston, offering interviews, asking if I consider consulting work or a director-level role in culture and employee experience. One email stood out. It came from a woman named Rachel Hampton, director of people and culture at a mid-sized startup in Portland called Lumitech. Subject line, "We value what others discard." In the email, she wrote, "We read your story. We believe in people-first leadership. We're looking for someone like you to help us build a better workplace, one where grief isn't punished and dignity isn't optional." I read the email twice, and then a third time. I didn't know if I was ready to jump back in, but damn, it felt good to be seen. That weekend, I drove back to my dad's house in Denver. We sat on the porch, both sipping from chipped mugs that said "World's Best Son" and "World's Okayest Dad." I told him everything. The viral post, the job offers, the article, the messages from strangers who were finally fighting back. He sat in silence for a while, just rocking slowly in his chair. Then he said, Your mother would have been so proud of you. That hit me harder than any comment, any viral number, any legal win. Yeah, I said, voice cracking. I hope she knows. He nodded. She does. As the sun set behind the Rockies, I looked out at the sky and thought about how fast life can fall apart, and how sometimes, if you stand your ground, it can come back together in ways you never expected. I'd lost my mother. I'd lost my job. But I had found my voice, and people were listening. When I stepped off the plane at Portland International Airport, I still wasn't entirely sure why I said yes. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way Rachel Hampton had written her email. Genuine, human, like someone who actually read my post and didn't just skim the hashtags. Or maybe I just want to see if there really was such a thing as a company that treated people like people. Lumateca's office was tucked into a converted warehouse in the Pearl District. Exposed brick, tall windows, handwritten chalkboard menus in the kitchen. The kind of place where dogs were allowed, kombucha was on tap, and everyone looked like they ran a podcast about ethical tech. Rachel met me at the front, holding a steaming coffee and wearing jeans, boots, and an easy smile. "You made it," she said, offering a warm handshake. "We've all been looking forward to this." "Oh," I echoed. She laughed. "Your post made the rounds here. Let's just say you've got a fan club on the 3rd floor." As she led me through the office, I noticed something I hadn't seen in a while. People actually seemed happy to be at work. There were whiteboards covered in sticky notes, open laptops, actual laughter. A young woman in a wheelchair zipped past, waving to someone across the room. No one looked afraid. No one looked like Todd. Rachel introduced me to their CEO, a lanky, thoughtful guy named Jonah Glass who offered me a seat in his corner office, which was exactly the same size as everyone else's. "I've read everything," he said, sliding a printed copy of my Atlantic article across the table, like it was a dossier. "And we want to bring you on." "Doing what?" I asked. "Changing us before we need changing." I blinked. "You'll need to be more specific." He leaned forward. "People like to talk about company culture like it's some mysterious force, but it's not. It's decisions. It's moments. It's policies written by humans, and sometimes against humans. We want someone who's been on the other side. Someone who knows how it feels when a company gets it wrong." "You're saying you want me to prevent you from becoming the people who fired me?" "Exactly." It was the first time in months I smiled without thinking about who I'd lost. The job title was Director of Human Experience. Not HR, not benefits, not people ops. Human Experience. I thought it was ridiculous at first. Like one of those titles that sounds good on LinkedIn but means nothing. But then I sat in on my first meeting. It was with a woman named Tasha, senior engineer, single mom, damn good at what she did. Her son had just been diagnosed with epilepsy, and she was asking for a flexible work schedule and more remote options. The old HR guy, well-meaning, no doubt, was giving her textbook policy answers. I leaned forward. "Why don't we just build the policy around her?" The room fell quiet. And then Rachel said, "I second that." That was the moment I realized my role wasn't ceremonial. They weren't parading me around like a PR trophy. They meant it. They wanted to be better. And slowly, piece by piece, I helped them do just that. I rewrote their bereavement policy. 3 days? Gone. Now it was 2 weeks minimum, with the option for extensions. No more required proof. No more HR emails asking for a funeral program, like it was a homework assignment. We added mandatory grief training for managers. We built an anonymous review system for employees to flag insensitive responses or toxic supervisors. And every Friday, I hosted a 30-minute open Zoom called Human Hour, where anyone, interns to executives, could talk about anything from workplace burnout to family stress to what grief actually feels like after casseroles stop coming. It became the most attended meeting of the week. But not everyone was thrilled. One executive, Greg from Product, cornered me in the hallway one day. "This all feels a little soft," he said. "We're still a business, right?" I smiled politely. "Yeah, and soft things hold a lot of weight, like parachutes." He didn't say anything after that. One afternoon, I opened my inbox and saw an email from an address I hadn't seen in months. Subject, just saw the article. From Todd McAllister at CrestonTech.com. My stomach tightened like a vice. I clicked, Ethan. I just read the piece in The Atlantic. I won't make excuses. I didn't handle it right. I was under pressure. Doesn't matter. I'm sorry, Todd. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I hit delete. 6 months in, Rachel pulled me into her office. We've been nominated for a National HR Innovation Award, she said, grinning like a kid at Christmas, specifically for the bereavement and dignity framework you designed. I laughed. Are you sure it's not the kombucha? She waved a hand. Ethan, look around. This place is better because you came here. I didn't say anything, but I felt it. I felt in the thank you notes from employees who now felt safe taking care of dying parents. I felt in the emails from other companies asking for our policy templates. I felt it every time I walked into the office and wasn't afraid. Late one night, I sat at home scrolling through the original LinkedIn post. It now had over 2 million impressions, 1,000 comments, and more personal stories than I could count. I added one more comment to the thread. Update. I didn't just find a new job. I found a new mission. Turns out, the thing that broke me might also be the thing that helps fix the system that broke so many others. Thank you, Mom. You were right. People matter more than policy. And then I hit post. Again, a year had passed. I stood outside the Creston Tech headquarters in downtown Chicago, the same glass building where I once sat in a conference room, heart pounding, as Todd told me I was no longer needed. Only this time, I wasn't here as an employee. I was here as a guest speaker. It was surreal. Their new VP of People, Laura Green, had reached out weeks ago. She said things had changed, that after the fallout from my viral post, their board forced a complete cultural audit. Policies were overhauled. Todd had stepped down. They wanted me to speak at their new annual event, Human First, Reimagining Workplace Culture. At first, I thought, hell no. But then I thought about Mom, about her saying, don't let bitterness take root, and about how many people still worked here, still needed someone to remind the top floor that dignity wasn't optional. So I said yes. Now I stood at the podium, staring out at a sea of suits. I'm not here to shame anyone. I began. But I am here because not long ago I lost my mom, and 3 days later I lost my job. Silence. Then I smiled. And strangely enough, that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I told them everything about Lumatech, about the new policies we created, the lives they changed. I read out a letter from an employee whose job had saved her marriage because her company finally saw her. When I finished, the room didn't just clap, they stood. And in the back row, Laura wiped a tear from her cheek. Outside, as I waited for my Uber, a young man caught up to me, nervous, maybe 24, holding a notepad. Mr. Cole, he asked. I'm Ethan Walker. I chuckled. 2 Ethans in one city? That's dangerous. He grinned. I just want to say thank you. I joined Creston 2 months ago, and the leave policy, it helped me take care of my dad. Chemo's rough, but I didn't have to choose between him and my job. Because of you, my throat tightened. I reached out and shook his hand. No, I said, because of us. And just like that, I knew the system can change. Sometimes, all it takes is one voice that refuses to stay quiet.